Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone if you enjoy this content to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Tamara on the podcast. I did her British version of her name, like we talked about just recently, since she's from the UK after being originally from Hungary. But she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and discuss all things health and fitness with us. She's in the States right now, though, I will say, so it's a little bit warmer than it probably would be in the UK. But Tamara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I asked this question to every single person. What is the weather like today?
It is pretty good here right now. The sun is out, although they were predicting some thunderstorms and rain and all that, and I can't see it, but, I know that the weather can change in a minute. So right now it's actually pretty good, and it's getting milder now. It's around 60s, I think, because you say it in Fahrenheit, we do Celsius. So I have to get used to it. It's in the 60s now.
That's the same thing that I dealt with last night, because the guest from Australia was like, oh, we're having great weather here. It's 23 degrees outside. And I was like, that is not great weather. And then she had to remind me that it was in Celsius. And I was like, yeah, Fahrenheit, that's a completely different story, So, but that's the one thing that I've learned from talking to so many people from all these different areas. But before we get into all that weather stuff, because that's just depressing for me as it is, because it is 30 degrees Fahrenheit right here, and I'm just looking outside and just, oh my God. Hopefully it'll get better one of these days, but why don't you give us your backstory first to start off of what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to you becoming a bodybuilder?
Oh, well, it goes back to, about 30 years or probably even more. I actually started training when I was 14. That was back in Hungary, and I had a knee injury when I was around 10. So I was a very active child. I was always doing something. We played outside, when I was growing up. And all of a sudden, because I had this knee injury, I fell while ice skating. So I fell on the ice. And I literally could barely move for about 6 months. And I put on a lot of weight. As a child who is always active, all of a sudden I couldn't move. So I put on a lot of weight. So I was around 14 and I thought, okay, I really need to do something about it. I didn't like it. And actually, nobody in the family did any sports. They didn't play any sports. So it was not something that I saw at home. But I thought, okay, I need to try something. And I had a classmate and she went to a karate class. And I thought, okay, well, I could do that. So this is how it started. I was 14 and I was doing it for about 8 years. Actually, I stopped just before the black belt. And I stopped because I had a lower back injury, which wasn't actually an injury. It turned out to be some sort of a birth defect, that literally just came out when I was around 18. And I had to stop for about a good year or so. And even though I went back after that, it wasn't the same, to be honest, because I stopped for a year. So I started going to the gym with friends as well. I was in my early 20s, probably 21, 22. And it kind of took over in a way that I didn't start bodybuilding until about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, but I was always going to the gym. I was always doing something. And about 20 years ago, I moved to the UK and I couldn't go to a gym. I didn't have a car, so I went running. So I was always doing something. I went for a walk. So I was kind of active all the time. And then in the UK, I joined a gym where they encouraged me that I should compete, which I was not really thinking about, to be honest, because I always thought, as you said earlier about the diet, oh, I love my food far too much, I can't do that. But they kept saying that, yeah, you've got the genetics, you've got a good base for that. So I thought, okay, let me just think about it. And I was very shy at that time as well. I was thinking, well, I can't stand on stage in a bikini. I cannot possibly get into that shape that I feel comfortable like that. And eventually I approached a coach who became my first coach, and he was very encouraging. But I knew that I couldn't tell him that, well, I just would like to see if I can get into shape. Either I'm serious about competing or I'm not. No one's going to take me seriously. So I said, okay, let's just go for it. Let's try and compete. And he was very, very good. He was very patient with me. He taught me the basics, basically, of all this nutrition and everything. And I was very keen to learn as well. And we started working, I think, beginning of 2011, we started working together. And then I had two competitions in 2011. And then in 2012, I switched federations. I went to a qualifier, which I won, which qualified me to go to World Championships, which was in Russia. And I actually won that. So that was my fourth competition ever. And that gave me a big kick, to be honest. That gave me a big kick. And in the same year, I was also a British champion with the same federation. That was the NAC Federation, which is an amateur federation that's fairly big in Europe, especially in Germany. I think they are based in Germany, to be honest. So they are very big in Germany, and they are quite big in Europe. And then obviously once I won that, I tried to win more titles in more federations, obviously, as an amateur. So I competed with other federations, with NABA. I competed at their World Championships every year for like 5 or 6 times. I competed with WABA, and I think that was it. Once with PCA as well. And eventually I just thought, okay, I just need to go for the real thing. And that was in 2018. I went to an IFBB Pro qualifier, which was in Denmark, and I got my pro card. And that was the time when I thought that maybe I should just make a move to the US as well, because most of the competitions are here in the US. And little did I know about COVID at that time, but somehow, even the traveling back and forth, even in normal circumstances, it just felt a little bit messy and long-winded. So I tried to make plans to come to the US eventually, and this is what happened in 2020. Yes, and here I am now.
That is awesome. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you picked the right time to come during COVID in 2020 to come
No,
here.
I literally came right before. It
Okay,
was
good.
such
Yeah.
a last minute. You cannot believe it.
Oh my God. Yeah. That is, yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, then you made the right choice then, I guess. But yeah, that is just insane how just, yeah, how much that changed really anything. And how did you stay in shape really during the pandemic and do all that? Because I mean, with everything shut down, I am surprised that as many people are still competing as they are right now.
Honestly, all I can say is that I'm blessed, because in 2020 I stayed in an area where the gym only closed down for 3 weeks. That was really a blessing. I didn't know that. I didn't know how the other areas operated or what happened in other areas. But yes, eventually our gym closed down as well. But it was literally 3 weeks, and then it reopened. However, obviously, we didn't know that in advance, that it's going to be only 3 weeks. So, yes, I had all my bands. I had all that willpower and determination that, yes, I'm going to train. And I did. I was just blessed enough that it only took me 3 weeks. If I had to train, I don't know, 6 weeks or 3 months, in the garden, I would have done it. Although I keep saying that these 3 weeks probably did a lot better to my body than, they didn't do any harm. I couldn't train with heavy weights, obviously, so the load on the muscles, on the joints was a lot less, and I guess my body needed that too. So it was more like body weight exercises, training with a band in the garden. Probably the neighbors are laughing, but I don't really care. And I had some really good workouts, I have to say. It was more like creative, you just have to use your brain. I was using like water bottles, everything that I could.
Oh yeah, I mean, bodyweight exercise can be some of the best workouts that you can have. You know how to do them right. I mean, it's all about the reps and the form basically. With
The form, exactly, exactly. I keep telling people, that you don't necessarily need heavy weights.
Mhm.
You can burn out your legs with body weight exercises. And I've got big legs, so it's not like, oh, I don't want, I haven't got legs, so I don't know what I'm talking about. No, I could burn out my legs with literally just the bands and body weight exercises. You just up your reps, slow down your reps as well. And then you will feel it, definitely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, well, speaking about, I love to talk genetics on this podcast because everybody, is on social media these days, and I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and it's just like, oh my God, I just want to strangle them just because it's like you do not understand that you can train just as hard as someone and you're not going to look just like them. I mean, unfortunately, that's the case, but whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really takes off, that they don't have to train as much, and they have that one body part that just drags behind, that they have to train to oblivion to get to catch up. What was one body part that really took off for you and one body part that you really just had to drag behind?
Okay, well, one body part that took off for me was my legs, but not to say that I didn't train them hard. I did. I've been training legs twice a week for about 6 or 7 years now. So, literally, most of the time that I've been doing bodybuilding, I double up on leg training. So, and it shows. Um, but having said that, yes, that's something that kind of, I'm not saying that it just grows on its own. Yes, I put the work in, but you can see as well. You can see the results. Um, I had some problems at the very first time, especially when I went to my coach in 2011. That was my back. I basically didn't have back because I didn't have the mind muscle connection with my back. I couldn't see it, so I couldn't train it properly. It was him who actually taught me how to feel the muscles, how to get the mind muscle connection. And then obviously it took some time, but then you build it up once you know how to do that. I would say probably my lagging body parts are my shoulders. I've had a chronic injury, I can say that, because it was going on for years and years. Touch wood, it is okay now. But it was very, very painful to push through that, to still try and build it. And I know that I still need more. However, I don't want to be too harsh on myself because I know that unfortunately it's also down to genetics, the insertions of the muscle. And it's not like I haven't got the size, it's just, the shape of it is not like some girls have really popping shoulders and others have a little bit less rounded shoulders. And that's genetics. So you can't really do much about that. And I just have to accept the fact. I still train them hard. I used to train them 3 times a week because I needed to bring them up when the injury kind of got better. I started training them 3 times a week. They got better, yes. They kind of, I managed to bring them up a little bit more, but I don't think they will ever be like, one of those rounded cannonballs, shoulders.
That's one thing that so many people do not understand that aren't in the lifestyle too, is that like size doesn't matter. It's shape that matters, really. It's like
Yeah.
you could have like a foot long shoulder basically, and it's like if it's not shaped, it doesn't matter. It's not, so yeah, I love when people talk about that because yeah, I have had some people on here where it's like, yeah, they're just big, but they don't have the shape in it. And then you have some of those people that might not be as big, but they have the shape, and then that's, unfortunately, that's what a lot of the times the judges are looking for, and that's more important to a lot of people. So yeah, so many people do not
Yes.
get that.
I think it's also the proportions. So, yes, shape obviously matters, but also the proportions. So, what I'm trying to do is basically keeping my whole body in proportion. So, at least, even though my shoulders are not popping like that, but it's still in proportion to my whole body. So, it's not like, oh, your shoulders are on
Oh
the
yeah, you don't
ground.
you don't want to have like trouble like fitting through doors with your shoulders basically, and then every other body part is just like it's just like fine, where you're just like, yeah. So
Yeah, I'm still good at that.
Yeah, no, and that's, yeah, that is awesome. And I mean, this is also so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. And most
Oh,
people
it
do
is.
not understand that because they'll just notice the physical changes and be like, oh, wow, you look amazing. They don't realize the mental transformation that has taken place as well. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Well, I think I actually got stronger mentally a lot more than physically. Yes, people don't realize that, and it's not just not just the training, but also the mental toughness when it comes to the diet, as you mentioned it earlier as well. That usually that is the most difficult part for most people, that they cannot keep themselves into a certain diet or just have the discipline of not eating everything in front of them. So yes, it is, and I do believe that it builds character as well. So I have no regrets, not just because of how I look, but because I do believe that I needed this mental journey just as much as the physical. Yes. Yes, especially nowadays, this world nowadays is, I don't know where it is going, but definitely you need to be kind of tough in the head to stick to things.
As someone who has found a good mental outlet, whether it be podcasting or working out for me as well, it's like I do not know where I would be like if I didn't have that outlet to really find that mental
Mhm.
fortitude. Because yeah, I know some people who unfortunately, yeah, they don't have that, and I am still surprised that they are functioning as human beings. Now I don't know if they
Yes.
really are, but at least on the outside appearances, it seems like it. But I mean, I talked about it with you before. The one thing that I struggled with the most is the nutrition aspect. And that is one thing that I think so many people look at on the inside and they just say, okay, I could never do this sport because of the nutrition, which is something that even
Yeah.
you thought in the beginning as well. What have been some of the biggest nutritional changes that you've made? Because that is just, to so many people, that is one thing that is not talked about as much as it should, just how vast of an impact the nutrition has on this lifestyle.
Oh, absolutely. Um, it's just your relationship with food, really. I mean, even when I started in 2010, 2009, people in that first gym where they encouraged me to try and compete or get into that shape, um, they kind of advised me on the diet, what I should do. And the concept was obviously eating clean during the week and then have a cheat day. And this is what people still think, that, oh, I eat clean 6 days a week, I need a cheat day. And I'm not going to lie to you, at the very beginning, that cheat day was literally from the morning until midnight. I was binging like you don't get to eat anything else, the following day. It was crazy because I can have a cheat day. And people don't realize that, no, it doesn't work like that, because it's just too much. It's too much. So it took me a while as well to recognize this, and it takes some time to build up the discipline. So I see this with my clients as well, that it's very hard for them to understand that, okay, you don't need a cheat meal. The cheat meal is not like a reward. We use a cheat meal when you need it, when your body needs it. It could be even mental. It doesn't actually has to be, a physical thing that, okay, now your body needs a cheat meal. Yeah, then obviously you get one. But it could be sometimes a mental thing that, okay, now someone is getting really down with the diet. Okay, let's just give them a cheat meal so that they can mentally come up a little bit. um, but it took me quite a few competitions as well to stop that binge eating after a competition. And I remember in the first probably 3 or 4 competitions, what I was doing, I was living in the UK. And on the last week leading up to a competition, I could go to the supermarket to do my shopping, and literally everything. Oh, I want to eat that. I want to eat that. And I had bags of food, sweets, snacks at home until, for after the competition. And they were foods I wouldn't even normally eat. Just because you're hungry and you're depleted, you're like, oh my God, that looks so good. Yeah, let me just buy that. Let me just buy that. And then I have a really bad problem. I cannot throw away food. So when I have all the food at home,
There's
I'm like,
only one way you can get rid of it.
exactly. I can't, throw it away. I
Mm.
paid money for it. People are starving. I have to eat it. So yes, it was terrible. But then again, as I said, it was at the beginning. So it took me a few competitions to go through, and now I really don't even buy anything in advance. I just buy things, especially sweets, that I might need on the day of the competition or before I go on stage. And then when I come off, I go and what I would like, I buy, not like having a big bag of sweets, waiting for me.
I had that same problem where when I used to live at home, the Monday, I'd be like, this Monday, I'm going to start eating cleaner now and I'm going to, keep up with my workouts again. And then my parents would go and buy like some frozen pizzas like that Sunday. And
Yeah,
I'd be like, you realize I have to eat this now because like, we're not going to get rid of. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the problem
yeah.
right there is if you just don't even buy it, then, then you really don't even have to worry about it. But
Exactly, exactly. I had the same thing. Although now, even if I buy like a tub of ice cream, put it into my freezer, I can't see it. I don't really have any issues with it. Once I see if it's right in my face every single day, I would have an issue with it. I don't think, especially during a contest prep, I would touch it, but it would take some energy to
oh
resist,
yeah.
to like, okay, you know what? I don't want that. I'd rather put it away, and it's literally like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. And that, that might, I don't know if that would work for me just because I'd be like, oh my god, it's still there, it's still in the fridge. But for some people, yeah, they have that mental strength, which again is why I don't compete, because I do not have that mental toughness that competitors do have. But where do you find that sort of mental strength when it comes to those days? Because like, let's be honest, everyone has those days when they're just tired, they don't want to work out, they might not have gotten the right amount of sleep the night before. How do you pull through on those days? Because I think that's what really differentiates people who compete as opposed to just the average general public, because the average general public, they'll find all the excuses in the world to not go to the gym, but the bodybuilders, they're just like, okay, I really need to get this done. But where do you think that strength and that dedication comes from to be able to push through on those days?
Honestly, it's never even a question. It's never even a question for me. It's like, even if I wake up tired, I couldn't sleep the night before, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go to the gym. And after that, I might take a nap. If I'm really, really tired, I will take a nap. But I guess I'm just reading a book that is called The One Thing. And it is talking about, basically the one thing, the most important thing that you have to focus on, and everything else, you have to kind of let go, because then you're not going to get anywhere with that thing that you want to achieve. And they are talking about it that, it takes discipline to do that for, I think they say, for like 6 weeks. And if you can do it for 6 weeks, after that, it becomes a habit of your day. So basically, right now, to me, it's not even a question. I'm tired. Okay, well, sometimes I travel and I'm like, okay, well, I will have to get up early then, because then first I'm going to do my workout and then I'm going to go on the road. It's just something that you live with. I guess it's something similar to you, like the podcast, like, yeah, well, I need to do this interview first and then I can do my things. So that's for me the training.
Oh, believe me, I would be telling the truth. I said there are some days that I wake up and I was like, I really don't want to do this, but you know what? I just got to get it done. And then as soon as it starts, yeah, then you're just like, oh, this is totally fine. Everything. Same thing with my workouts too. I'm the one person where I will go dragging until I literally do the first exercise, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, now it's fine. Now I can really get things going. But that's just what I'm like with a lot of things, where it's like you're gonna have to drag me to it, but once I get there and get started, it's absolutely fine, and then
Yeah.
it's able to push through. And so yeah, it's really just a part of the big mental game. But the number one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years when I started this podcast was that for so many of these guests, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition, it's harder than your working out for the vast majority of them. What has your experience been like with posing?
Well, I do realize that I need to practice more. And it's best to practice when you're off season. Because once you start dieting and obviously you get closer to competition, you're getting more and more tired mentally and physically. So it's a lot more difficult to pull it through. We still do it because we have to. I mean, posing is such a big part of the whole competition itself, because you can do the hard work for, I don't know, 12, 16 weeks, whatever. And then if you cannot show off your physique in the right way, obviously on stage, then you're almost not doing anything. So it is very, very important to practice that. And you need to practice that a lot, to be honest, because even though I've been competing for, yeah, 10 years, 11 years now, I still have to improve. I still know that, I've got poses where I could improve a lot better. Yeah.
Out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Okay. Well, what my least favorite pose was was the abs and thighs, because I just couldn't do it properly. And last year I had some posing classes, and the lady showed me Sid Gilliam, by the way, yeah, 5 times Mr. Figure Olympia. We train in the same gym, so I thought, well, why would I go to anybody else? When I've got someone like that, in my home gym. And she showed me how to do that pose right. So now I feel a lot more confident about it. But before, I just couldn't do it. Right now, probably my least favorite poses. I would say probably my um, lat spread, my back lat spread. I'm still not happy with it, so I still keep, practicing the back poses. My favorite one is probably the front double bicep. Yeah, I think that I can nail pretty well now.
Oh, I've seen her post on Instagram. Yeah, she nails it. Everyone. Yeah, so it's yeah, yeah. That's a strong suit for so many guests that I've had on too,
You
as well.
see,
Yep.
you see, maybe I should start posing like back lat spreads on Instagram, and then all that practice would probably add up.
That's true. That doesn't sound like too bad of a plan, myself, but it's just the conditioning too that most people do not understand. It's like you're not gonna be up there for seconds at a time. Like you're up there for minutes at a time holding these poses. And most people don't understand that the human body is not meant to be holding a pose like that for that long amount of time. That's why I've said if you take people from the general public up there and you had them do posing, they'd last like probably like 5 seconds. And then, but sometimes you're up there for minutes. How long into your journey do you really think it took for you to be able to develop that conditioning and that stamina that it takes to be able to hold those poses for as long as they sometimes make you hold them?
Well, now I'm feeling okay with it, but I think it's just the years of practice. It's just the years of practice that you do, after training. And yeah, you have to be very conscious about it, because yes, you're right. They make you do some poses and hold those poses for seconds and seconds on stage. So you need to be prepared for that. Not everyone can do that. And sometimes you see it, on stage, that some people just can't hold the poses, sometimes. But I mean, sometimes other things happen as well, they faint and all that. I think it could be the combination of literally everything. And holding the pose for that long, yeah, it's a conditioning that you need to practice, just like your normal conditioning. You need to keep doing it, because it's very embarrassing if you can't, once you've got your 5 seconds on stage, and then you can't hold the pose.
Oh, yeah, and I've seen that a couple of times on some of the shows that I've, seen online and everything like that, and it's just like, "Oh, you poor thing." But I mean, when you won your pro card, because you were in the sport for what, like 7 years before you won your IFBB pro card, what was
Yeah.
that moment like for you when you finally won that pro card? Because so many people that I talk to, that's the highlight of their career, no matter what they achieve afterwards, just because that is the affirmation that, like all that hard work that they put in the gym has finally paid off and they can compete in pro shows now. And, it's, you compete with the big fish now. But what was that moment like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
Yes, it was. Well, it was a big step. I definitely didn't expect it, to be honest with you. Um, I was a little bit pissed off, not when I won my pro card, but that's why I went to the IFBB Pro League because I used to compete with one of the federations with NABA, and I really wanted to win the NABA World Championships as well. But I always got second and third and second and third every year, you know. And I thought, oh my God, you know, I don't know, they are taking the piss, you know, this is just unreal. And literally, I got second again at a competition in May. I remember that was in Italy in 2018. And I thought, okay, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to try for the pro card. And honestly, I didn't expect to get it at the first try. So it was almost like unbelievable for me. Yeah, but yes, as you said, definitely it was one of the highlights. Yes. Although, if I want to be honest with you, my biggest highlight I think was the World Championships because I won that World Championships in Russia, beating the Russians. And I always thought that, if I may say so, nowadays you wouldn't be able to do that because they wouldn't let you do that. And I think that was probably the highlight of my career. And the pro card is a close second.
Oh, a Hungarian being a Russian, that's always, something to celebrate. Yeah, absolutely. So, you kidding me? Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, anything that, yeah. So, yeah, and that's great. Yeah, yeah, winning the world in Russia. Yeah, that would probably be my highlight too, as well. If I could honestly really,
Oh,
think
no,
about it.
no, no. It's not just about Russia. I also competed in Brazil
Oh,
once,
yeah.
and I didn't come any close. All the girls, they were from Latin America, and they all finished in front of us. It
Yep.
was literally just a lady from Australia and me.
Well, because they have like the 15-foot legs, basically, the South American girls. So yeah, that's why.
Well, that's one of the things,
Yeah.
yes. And yeah, if you compete in Brazil, it's okay. I don't want to say anything, but
Oh
that
no,
was
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
comical, to be honest with you. So yeah, we were laughing after that. It was good
yeah.
fun, you know, but
Oh, I understand. I understand absolutely what you're saying. Yeah, I see some of them on Instagram, and I was like, okay, they look like they're just like made up in a lab somewhere, basically. Like I don't know what's going on. So yeah,
yeah,
I'll say,
yeah. So it was
yeah,
it was okay, but what I'm saying is that yes, that could have happened
hmm,
in Russia too,
yep.
but it didn't. And I was really grateful for that. And yeah, well, then I walked into it, you know, in Brazil. So whatever.
Hey, you live and you learn, I guess. But I mean, one of the things I love to also talk about is, like post show, because most people do not understand that look that you present on stage is not sustainable. You're not going to be able to look like that 24/7, and unfortunately, that is not the case. But what was that like when you first realized that, like, hey, no matter how hard I train and work out, I'm not going to be able to look like this, 24/7. And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career in this sport has gone on?
Yes, but it was mostly in the last few years, probably since I turned pro. Because before that, yes, I wanted to not to maintain, but stay close to that shape. And what you also need to realize is that it's also genetics. It's not just your food. You know, there are people who are genetically dry, you know, they are genetically lean. And I'm not saying they also have issues probably putting on weight or putting on size. So everyone is different, but I put on size fairly easy, but it's a lot more difficult for me to stay lean, or it was a lot more difficult for me to stay lean. And I remember when I was an amateur, especially in the first few years, my weight could just shut up, you know, after a competition, but like really a lot, a lot. And then with practice, you realize that, okay, you know what? I don't want to shed all that fat off. You know, I will have to get rid of it one day when I start my prep. And it's really hard work. It's very hard. So now I actually manage to keep fairly lean off season as well. And it doesn't really, it's not a sacrifice, you know, it's not hard anymore. But I think what happened to me and probably that happened to a lot of other girls or and guys as well throughout the years, your mindset changes and your goals change. It's not like, oh, I want to enjoy all the food I can. Yeah, I can enjoy some food when it's time for it, but for me to be able to stand on stage and have tight skin, for example, so that you don't want to put on like 20 pounds, 30 pounds of fat, off season, because I'm not 20 anymore. So that skin is not going to go back that quickly. So you have to consider all these things as you get older.
I'm 27, so I'm hopefully I got a few more years before I start to discover
Oh,
those
then
things
you know
myself. But
nothing.
yeah, I know nothing, and hey, I'm glad that I know nothing. So but that here we'll talk in 10 years, and then we'll see what that's like, for me. But
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that just that off season it's always been so fascinating for me, because it's like, if I compete, because like I do go through off seasons myself, where it's like during the winter I'm gonna put on like 10-15 pounds, just because that's just winter weather eating, and when it gets as cold as it does up here, you gotta put on a little bit of fluff. But I mean, just to see yourself in the mirror change all the time, it's got to be just a fascinating lifestyle to have, just knowing that like you're constantly changing, and it's just showing how great the human body can be at times. But I mean, like, let's be honest too. I mean, you're not the average looking woman. If you were to walk out dressed in public, the way that you are right now, you are going to get some stares and attention, just because everyone's going to be like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I don't really see that too often. What has that been like as your journey's gone on? Because I sort of find that like people that compete are sort of almost like mini celebrities when they walk out, just because you're going to draw more people's attention, just because it's human nature. When they see something, there's it's fascinating for them. But what has that journey been like for you, dealing with like people's reactions as your career has gone on? Has it been easier for you to sort of accept the fact that you're going to draw more people's attention, or is it still one of those things where you just are just sort of perplexed by it?
Well, let me tell you something. Even though I grew up in Hungary, then I moved to the UK, I actually lived in some other countries as well. And one of them was Egypt for a year.
Oh, yeah.
And then I still went back to the Middle East and I lived in Bahrain for 3 years. So, how to put it? In Egypt, I really didn't care. That was the first Muslim country I went to. And even though people try to tell me that, no, you need to cover up, you need to do this, you need to do that, I was like, no, 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 I don't really care. So that was back then. It was about 6 years ago now, actually 6 or 7 years ago. But when I moved to Bahrain, that was something completely different. And I also realized that I need to respect the people who live there too. So Egypt was a little bit more easygoing, but I noticed that in Bahrain it's a little bit more not strict, but maybe a little bit more serious. So I didn't really show off much. Usually I was wearing long pants, not necessarily shorts. Skirts, probably I never even wore in Bahrain. And even my arms, usually they were kind of covered, at least with the short sleeves. Um, I still had people coming up to me, and I still had people having like really nasty comments as well, which happens. Honestly, the positive comments were always more than the negative ones. You will always find negative, because I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. No one is. So, you can be as beautiful and as mainstream as you like, like a bikini competitor. You're going to find girls who are going to be jealous of you because of that. So they will not like you just because of that. So I don't really pay attention to other people, because if I did, I wouldn't be here now. But I would say, generally speaking, I think I get positive uh, comments. But if not, then I just laugh, because I honestly don't really care what people think. I'm not doing it for them. And, sometimes even the fans, believe it or not, they want to tell you, oh, you need to do this, you need bigger this, you need bigger
Yes.
that. And I'm like, hold on a second, you're not a judge, Just because you like big calves on women, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to get bigger.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of funny. So you just have to. Sometimes you really have to have a thick skin, to be honest.
What was
Yeah.
that like being like the only female bodybuilder in Bahrain too? What was the gym situation like there?
Well, Bahraini people are quite um, respectful in a sense that I could train to people right next to them day in, day out, but they wouldn't even say hello to you until someone introduces you to them, or you are with one of their friends and then they come up to us and they knew my name and everything, but they just wouldn't do that. So that was a different culture, and it was actually nice and respectful. In the gym, it wasn't an issue because in the gym, people are like minded. In the female only gyms, I had some jealousy, yes, of course. I'm not surprised. But, generally speaking, it didn't really stop me or bothered me, or they didn't really do anything nasty, that uh, usually I yeah, in a female gym because in the Middle East, in some countries they don't have in Bahrain they do have some mixed gyms, but they do have some female only and man only gyms as well. And when I was in a female only gym, this was the only time when I could wear like something short or sleeveless things inside the gym, because this is where all the other women dress like that too. Outside, they are also covered up, so they could see me. And yeah, not everyone liked me, because it was quite funny. When I first went to Bahrain, I literally just started my prep. It was end of March, so they saw me kind of off season, and then they saw the coming months slimming down. And they didn't like that. They told me that, we don't like you now because you're too skinny. No, it's not because I'm too skinny, it's because you cannot slim down, and you was watching me literally getting into this shape.
It's always funny how that seems to happen, yeah, especially as you slim down and get ready for your preps and everything. But speaking of slimming down, the number one thing that I hate more than life itself is cardio. And when I say cardio, I mean like actual running. I can walk for forever, and I live right next to a nature park, so I go on walks all the time. But when it comes to that damn cardio, I mean, I just absolutely hate it. But unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you sort of sign a deal with the devil when it comes to your cardio. What is your relationship with cardio like?
I don't mind. Generally speaking, I do cardio off season as well, literally for the cardiovascular health. And also because leg trainings are the heaviest trainings for me and probably for most people. And if I don't have the cardio, I get out of breath. So I always do cardio even off season. I don't mind, it's just a little bit less off season, and then I can step it up during the prep. I honestly don't mind. I've got my ebook reader, I just read, and yeah, you try to entertain yourself. It's like a dead time. Yes, it is. And it can be very boring if there is nothing out there that interests you. I can see people watch, movies or something on their phones. I'd rather read because it gives me a little bit more time for myself, and it kind of distracts me from the cardio itself as well.
Yeah, distractions are definitely key. Like I ran out of movies during COVID though to watch. So like I literally just because I watched like 100 movies at least, while I was on the treadmill, during COVID. So yeah, it got to the point now where I was like, okay, now so what do I do? So yeah, everyone, you need to find at least some form of distraction if you're going to be doing a lot of cardio. That really,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
that it really is the big difference maker there. But a question that I've only recently been asking people that I'm surprised it took me this long to figure it out, but this is something that even me myself ask myself when I'm talking to some of these guests, like, why do they do this? Like, why do they do this to themselves? Like all the like when I hear these stories about preps and stuff and all the restrictions that go on, it's like after talking to so many bodybuilders, like I get it, but even still to this day, I'll talk to some people and I'll be like, why? Like, what's the point? So, and I bet you hear this all the time. Like people come up to you like, why do you do this? Like, what's the angle? How do you like to respond to that? Because I've always found everyone's answer now to like why they do it is different, but it's somewhat the same. But I just like to figure out, it's like, why do you do this? Because there are days where even I bet you yourself are thinking to yourself like, why am I doing this?
Well, let me say this first. Even though I've been training since I was 14 years old, I was never in this shape. I didn't look like this in my 30s,
Oh,
or
if you looked
even
like
in
this when you
my
were 14, I wouldn't know what the heck was going on. Yeah. It's like, dang, she's I guess she's, she's really working out, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, but if I showed you the picture how I looked in my mid-20s, you wouldn't say, or just before I started bodybuilding, you wouldn't say that I was training there. I was never actually obese, but I was never in shape, in proper shape. I looked like an average person. And now I realize that I can look something better to my standards, because yes, obviously some people don't want to have muscles, some people don't want to be this big, but that's fine. I wouldn't want to look like them either, so it's completely fine with me. It's to my standards. I have to like how I look. And because I was never in this shape when I was younger, it's kind of like a motivation for me. I like the contest prep because I like the shape I'm in. And I know that I cannot keep it for long. I cannot keep it forever. So I enjoy looking that lean, because before I couldn't achieve that, even though I was training, but my nutrition was off. I didn't know much about nutrition at that time. So I could never look like that. And even now, I usually say that, you know what, I didn't look like this in my early 30s, in my 20s. I'm in a lot better shape now. And yes, it is difficult. It is probably even more difficult as you get older to diet down, because your body gets more stubborn, even though, you get to know your body. But yes, as you get older, the training, you push it through, your body wears off, and you feel that it takes a lot longer after a competition to recover. And you have to be really mindful of that. So you need to know why you're doing it.
I mean, that's why I've always said the older people that I have on this podcast are the most impressive out of anyone, just because, like, yeah, I've had like some 60-year-olds and I've even had a 70-year-old on it. It's like how you're able to do that at that age, when I would honestly just be thinking about just sitting on the couch all day, taking naps all day, basically, and that's my goal, when I'm 60 or 70 years old. So, how they're able to do it, is even, just so much more impressive to me. But I mean, it's just, with this sport, it's always ever evolving and always ever changing. And you've been in this for 11 years. What have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen in this sport from when you first started to where you're at right now? Because, I mean, if I were to even think about what bodybuilding was like from 2011, it's probably a completely different sport almost.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the girls and the girls' classes as well, and all these overlaps between the classes. Um, it's it's definitely going into direction. It's not what it used to be. Yes. I don't necessarily think that the bigger is the better for women. It has to be a balance of size and conditioning. Um, and yes, I really don't want to talk about competitions and judging and all that, but yes, it is definitely going into a direction. Um, Probably also because nowadays, finally, there are more and more female bodybuilders as well. It kind of stopped, or I had the feeling, especially when it was taken out of the Olympia and the Arnolds, it kind of stopped. And probably that was the reason why I was not um, going for the pro card either at that time. And I was comfortable competing as an amateur because I couldn't see that going anywhere. There was no um, reward, if you like, because now you can try and compete to qualify for the Olympia. But before, when there was no Olympia for us anymore, it was like, okay, so I can compete as a pro, and then what's going to happen? Nothing. There is no title, there is no uh, end goal where you want to get to. So yes, it is definitely um, changing. It is changing, and as I can see the requirements for the women, are changing too, probably for the men as well, but I'm just talking about the women right now. Um, yes, women used to be a lot smaller and they used to have a shape, a very nice shape. Now it's about size, sometimes even size, not necessarily conditioning. And you're thinking, well,
Yeah, if you just compare winners from all these years past, I mean, you'll see that trend yourself. Yeah, I mean, it's just if they should do like a slideshow of just progression from like 1980 to like where it's at like right now, just the winners and what they look like. I mean, you could just see it,
yeah.
and it ebbs and flows sometimes throughout years, but it's just yeah, it's ever evolving. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Ooh. When you say about bodybuilding or about, you're talking about the sport itself?
Yeah, yeah, like the sport. Yeah, yeah.
The sport itself. About female bodybuilding to change something. Well, it's honestly, I don't even know what to say because it's really not my place to comment on anybody else, and everyone does what they feel like doing,
Oh, for me, prize money.
Well, yeah, the prize money, yeah, that's a very good idea. Yes, that would be a great idea. But then again, we know that the prize money depends on the sponsors as well. And I don't know if you know that um, just realized this. I think last year, there are some masters competitions, and for the masters competitions, you actually have to pay for a registration fee, which is then, kind of split between the winners. So basically, you pay so that the winner can get some money. And I'm like, oh, I do understand that it's difficult to find sponsors for a competition. It probably is because we are living in different times, and but when you pay a membership and then you have to pay a registration, I think that's a little bit too much. So yes, you're absolutely right. Probably the prize money should be more. Yes, and not just more in general, but even, you know, I remember back in the days how much less the women earned at the Olympia than the guys, and I actually found that shocking, the difference between the two classes. That was shocking. So yes, the prize money, that's a very good idea. Yes.
I was too. It's not like it was just like half or whatever. It's like it was a lot less than that. So it was,
Exactly.
yeah,
It was not half,
yeah.
definitely.
I was shocked when I learned that too, and luckily it has seemed to be coming up a little bit more. It's still not where I think it should be, but it's working its way up there. But I mean, you were just such a great guest to have on and talk to. And when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to have you on in a year and just share what you've been up to. What are some goals that you have for the rest of this year?
For the rest of this year, you mean competitive goals?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, aiming for July. There are going to be 3 competitions in July, and they are fairly close to each other. Last year, I did 5 competitions, almost the full season. Yeah, apart from Omaha, I didn't do Omaha because I drive everywhere, so it would have been very difficult logistically to go from one competition to
Okay,
another.
so I have grandparents that live in Omaha, so we visit them like once or twice a year. That's the most boring drive of all time, is driving to Omaha. There's nothing there. There's nothing to do there. All it is just corn. You're just driving through stalks of corn. That's all it is. And especially coming from Minnesota, where we have to drive through Iowa, where the entire state of Iowa is just farmland, basically. So it's just
Yeah.
it's the most boring drive. So I'm actually glad that you didn't have to make that drive this year then.
Well, the thing is, I think how it was like Omaha, and the week after that, it was Norfolk. So that drive from Omaha to Norfolk would have been too much for me to do. So that's why I thought, okay, well, I can't do both. So I chose Norfolk because also that was Landa's competition as well. So yeah, last year I did 5, and it was very, very tiring. So now I'm just aiming for 3, which are one after the other, because I always think that dieting down for one competition is how to put it, it's a lot of hard work just to stand on stage once. So if you have any other competitions after that, the week after, 2 weeks after, then it's a good idea to pair it with others. So yes, this is what I'm planning to do for July, and then we will see how everything goes. So I already started my prep.
Was it a big culture shock for you to sort of realize how many Americans have cars and drive? Because coming from Hungary and the UK, where the public transportation system is so much bigger and better than it is here, we've had some foreign exchange students. I remember when I was in high school, and that was the biggest shock, was that like even as teenagers, everyone here had a car that they drove and everyone was driving, as opposed to maybe like in Hungary or the UK where everyone just takes the buses or they take other things. Was that a shock to you just to realize, like how much more driving is a thing here?
Not really.
Not really. Yeah.
Nah, nah. I mean, we had cars back in Hungary
Yeah.
as well. We were lucky in that sense, yes. But the public transport in Hungary is very good, to be honest. So you can get literally almost anywhere. In the UK, well, I wouldn't say that. The public transport is really good in London because you can't even drive. But I was always living outside of London, so I always needed a car. So it wasn't really a shock to come to the US and the driving. I mean, UK is a big country, not as big as the US, obviously, but in the UK there are some distances as well. There are some, places with traffic. So it wasn't really a shock. But actually, have you ever been to Egypt? Have you seen the traffic in Egypt?
Yeah. I've seen photos where like there's like 100 people stacked up on cars, and I'm just like, okay, how does that even work? But that's a whole different mystery in
Yes,
and of itself. But
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So the US is, trust me, it's a nice, civilized country to some things that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, I'm just thinking about like even like if I wanted to right now from Minnesota, if I want to drive to Texas, that's like a day and a half drive right there. Where it's like if you're in
Yeah.
Hungary or the UK, the most you're going to drive maybe is like 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 hours to get from like one end to
Yes.
the other one. Where it's like
Yeah.
for here, like to drive to California, that took my brother like 3 days to really drive from here to.
I
I
know.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just insane how vast it is, and especially people don't
Yes.
understand that in Europe. I mean, it's just they're not as big and they're all so tightly together, so you can just travel from one country to another. Whereas I could go to Canada if I want to, but that's like a 4 hour drive for me. That's because I'm so
Yeah.
close to the border. But other than that, yeah,
I've
it's not
been
too
to
much.
Minnesota last year.
What part of Minnesota did you go to?
Uh, Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Yeah, I'm like 15 minutes away from Minneapolis. Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah. I was there for a few days. And then from Minneapolis, I drove down to Omaha.
so you did my drive that I do all the time. Yeah. So basically, yeah, where it's just oh hey look, more corn. Hey, what do we got coming up for the next? It's a 6 hour drive basically. So I was like, yeah, what do we got for the rest of the 5 hours? Yeah, more corn to look at. Yeah,
Corn.
basically. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's really all there is to it. Yeah, there. Hopefully you came to Minnesota when it wasn't super cold.
No, it was actually okay. When was that? I think it was around September
Okay, yes.
last year, something like that. Yeah.
So you lucked out, basically. I mean, if you would have stayed for about 2 more months, then you would have, had fun, had a lot of fun. But you're from Hungary, so you understand what cold is, and you lived in the UK, so you understand what cold
I
is somewhat.
do.
So
Yes, I
luckily there's
do.
that. Yeah.
I do. But I I never change the tires in this country because in Hungary we have winter tires and summer
Oh,
tires.
yep.
In the UK we don't, again, because around London we don't get much snow. But when, yeah, that's why I was very cautious with my travels, that after October, November I don't travel up north because I haven't got winter tires and I really don't want to get stuck.
I've never had winter tires up here, but I have almost gotten into a crash almost every winter season. So I said almost. I've only been into one crash, and that's because the car was sliding and stuff. But yeah, it gets scary up here at times, especially. But my dad, so like, if I really need a ride here, I'll just call my dad, and then he'll pick me up from my apartment, and then he'll drive me to work because he has 4-wheel drive. So he really,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get stuck in anything like. But it's about once a year that I'll give him a call and say like, hey, I really don't want to risk it driving. So yeah, it's important.
Yes, I
It's
can
important.
understand that.
It's
Yeah.
important to have that. But lastly, I can see you have a tattoo on your shoulder of who's it
Yes.
of?
Come on, you tell me. You're American.
I don't
You
want to get
tell
it. I
me.
don't want to get it wrong. Is it Geronimo? I don't know. And here's the thing, like I'm like 5 miles away from an Indian reservation too. So like I should know this, but like I don't. You're gonna have to tell me. So you're gonna enlighten it. This is something that a lot of foreigners want. They can actually enlighten an American on their own culture. So this is your opportunity to.
It's so funny because here in America, I constantly have to do this. In Europe, someone sees that. Oh, that sitting bull. I'm like, But all jokes aside, seriously, in Europe, a lot more people recognize him for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Here, I always get the question, who is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Yes, but that's Sitting Bull. Yes.
That's the American education system for you. We don't really teach. We don't really teach that much what happened to the Native Americans, other than we had Thanksgiving with them, and then
Uh-huh.
other stuff happened that we don't talk
Yeah.
about here. So yeah. So
Yes, I
there's a
understand.
whole podcast that stuff here right there. So yeah, but yeah. So I did, and the funny thing was, I have been to South Dakota and saw the Sitting Bull monument that they're working on that still hasn't been finally built yet, but it's a work in progress. So yeah, I should have known that, everyone. And the thing is, I was a history major in college too, so go
Oh,
figure, everyone.
wow.
Go figure, everyone. So yeah.
Really? That's very interesting. Yes, I need to go to South Dakota. Yeah.
Yeah, I've
I
been to Mount
definitely
Rushmore
want
and
to
everything like
visit
that.
that.
It's great. It's an amazing thing to see, and yeah, I highly recommend it. But again, you guys, go and give her a follow on her Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. Buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies, and maybe get a workout in every once in a while. But oh my God, that's the most American food there is. First of all, coming from
Is
that,
it really?
Oh, Twinkies, yeah. So there's a state fair up here in Minnesota that happens during the summer where we have deep fried Twinkies that then they cover in chocolate after they deep fry them.
You're joking.
Nope.
Oh my God.
It's so bad for you. Like I had one once and I could feel a heart attack coming, right after I had it. But yeah.
I'm not surprised.
I gulped it down with some diet soda. Yeah.
Like
Yeah, only in America do they think of stuff like that. Where they're like, what can we kill? How can we kill our people faster by feeding them just the most heart attack prone food? But yeah, there is, and that's
Wow.
talking from someone that's about to have like some. I don't know. We might have something deep fried at the lunch that I'm gonna have right now after Easter. But okay, so lastly, I was gonna end things right there, but I totally forgot. I mean, we are recording this on Easter Sunday, everyone. This is gonna be out, like two weeks afterwards. But how do they celebrate Easter in Hungary? Is there any special celebrations that they do, or is it just not as much of a holiday there as it is here? Or how do they celebrate it?
Well, honestly, I left Hungary about a good 20 years ago. So I'm not 100% sure what they do now. But when I was back there, when I was growing up, we still had the guys coming around and sprinkle the girls. I don't know if that was ever a habit or custom here in the US.
Okay, yeah, what does that mean? Because I've never heard of that before.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, so this is what we used to do, that the guys, it kind of went down to just the family members throughout the years. But it's almost like during Halloween, the kids just knock on the doors and they go around and collect all the sweets. It's kind of something similar. It was like 30, 40 years ago back in Hungary. So the little boys, only the boys, go and they knock on the doors and they sprinkle the girls with water. Just with a little bit of water on your head. Or sometimes it can be like a bucket of water if they want to have fun.
If they really don't like you, yeah.
And then the girls give them the eggs. And I remember that when I was a child, we used to paint the eggs as well. So we had like the proper eggs, and then obviously the chocolate eggs took over. So after that, it was like chocolate. And then depending on obviously how old the boy is, when they come around, some of our family members, then we used to give them money. That was the last. Yes. But basically, I think it's more or less the same thing everywhere, because I asked around here now how they celebrate, and it's the ham. We have ham, ham rolls and ham this and ham that and ham and eggs, and yes.
That is what I'm going to be having it right after. And we just did the Easter egg hunts growing up. We did not sprinkle anyone with water or do anything like that. So hey.
Well, it could be with perfume as well. Sometimes it was perfume, or sometimes it was.
Are they just telling you that you don't smell nice? Then if they're just like, okay, we need to spray this girl with perfume, like just for the safety of the public, basically.
It's really interesting. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why they were doing it.
I'm gonna have to look that up, because there are those traditions like that I just find, as a historian, I just find so fascinating. It's like, how did that ever come to be? Where they're just like, we're just gonna sprinkle people with water and then you're gonna give them an egg. Basically, it's just yeah, I'm always fascinated by that. Like, I had to
Yeah.
look up the history of trick or treating and stuff like that, and it's just,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's just, I'm just so fascinated with that. So again, you're giving me homework to do after I get home from this. So I'm actually going to be looking up into that. But again, thank you
Good.
so much for coming on, sharing. Obviously, you've given me more than a lot of other guests can give, just because I'm actually have homework to do now, which is I'm very happy for. But
Oh, wow.
thank you again for coming on. I really really appreciate it. And it
Thank
was
you
just
for
so great for
having me.
talking to you, and thank you for readjusting. We had to schedule this an hour earlier because I literally, so when we scheduled this, this is how I little I pay attention to the date. I didn't even realize that we scheduled this on Easter, because like we scheduled this like a week ago, and then I was like, wait,
Yeah,
this Sunday? I was like, oh wait, that's Easter. So then she was very flexible, so we thank her for that. But again, thank you so
no
much, and
problem at all.
I
That's absolutely fine.
I really really appreciate it. And again, you guys go and check her out, go and give her a follow. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.